Hi, I'm Tracy Duggan, the Flourish coach, mentor, and mediator, and this is Step Up and Stand Out, your monthly moment to pause, reflect, and build the confidence to lead with authenticity and impact. If this podcast resonates with you, I'd love you to follow it, like this episode, ring the bell so you don't miss future conversations, and please do leave a review. It really does make a massive difference. Each episode is designed to sit alongside my Time to Flourish newsletter, giving you a moment of insight, reflection, and encouragement every month. And today, I want to talk about something that shapes careers, leadership, and belonging more than we realise. And that's the power of voice. And I want to share a personal story before we get started into the research and leadership side of this particular podcast. I want to share something real with you, something that happened to me early on in my career, because I spoke up about behaviour, something in the workplace that didn't feel quite right, something that I felt had crossed a line. And I remember thinking, this really must be addressed. So I used my voice and I raised this concern, clearly, professional, and with all the right intentions of doing the right thing. But what do you think happened? You're right, yeah, nothing. Nothing happened. It wasn't taken seriously. It wasn't followed through. And over time, that message became clear to me. Speaking up didn't lead to change. Now, here's the bit that stayed with me the most, because later on, someone else experienced something similar, the same behaviour, but this time it escalated, and it ended up in an employment tribunal, and it was a costly one. Financially, yes, but also in terms of reputation, trust, and the impact on people. And I remember thinking to myself that this could have been easily addressed so much earlier. It could have been prevented. But that's what happens when voice is ignored or not listened to. And it's why this conversation matters so much. Because voice isn't just about confidence. It's not about responsibility. Most organisations talk about communication, but voice is something deeper. Communication can still be one way. Voice requires participation. Voice is when someone says, I'm not sure this is working, or I see a risk here, and I think we could do this better. And voice being listened to is when those words are met with curiosity and not defensiveness. Voice sits at the heart of all of my work around belonging, because belonging isn't just about being included. It's about knowing that your perspective matters and that your voice is being heard and listened to. When people feel they belong, they contribute more openly. They challenge thinking. They bring more ideas forward. But when belonging and voice feels uncertain, something else subtle happens. People start editing themselves. They wait. They soften or they stay silent. And over time, organisations lose insight they didn't even realise they needed or that they had in the first place. So, one of the biggest misconceptions I see in organisations is this. Leaders assume silence means agreement. But often, silence means risk. Either it's not worth saying anything, or it's not actually safe to say anything. I've mentioned research by Amy Edmondson on psychological safety before, because that shows that the highest performing teams are not the ones making fewer mistakes. They're the ones where people speak up about them sooner, which means they learn faster, they fix faster, they adapt faster. You see, silence slows everything down because problems stay hidden. Ideas stay unspoken. And improvement never quite gets the traction that it needs. Voice, when it's present, accelerates performance. There's also a very human reason why speaking up can feel uncomfortable. You see, our brains are wired for belonging. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman found that social rejection activates the same areas of the brain as physical pain. So when you're in a meeting thinking, should I say this? Your brain is often scanning for a threat. Will this make me look foolish? Who will this upset? Will this go down badly? Psychologist Daniel Kahneman explains that we are naturally more sensitive to potential loss than gain. So the perceived risk of speaking up often outweighs the benefit, which is what leads us to hesitation, self-editing, holding back. And when that becomes a pattern, our confidence doesn't grow. It shrinks. This is something I see time and time again, particularly with women in leadership, capable, experienced, insightful, yet still saying, I just want to make sure I'm right before I say anything. So we double check, we triple check. We don't want to sound silly. And sometimes we just think, I'll wait and see what others think. Research from the Confidence Code shows that women are more likely to wait until they feel fully prepared before speaking, whereas men are more likely to contribute while still figuring things out. And I've seen this time and time again in organisations. This means organisations are often missing out on valuable thinking, not because it's not there, but because it isn't voiced. And this is why voice isn't just a confidence issue. It's a leadership and cultural issue. Because confidence grows in environments where every contribution is welcomed, not judged. And I talk about that a lot in my programs. Voice doesn't exist in isolation. It is shaped by leadership behaviour, and often it's the smallest moments that matter most. A leader who shuts down a challenge, even unintentionally, teaches the room to stay quiet. A leader who says, that's interesting, say more about that, opens the door. Daniel Coyle calls these belonging signs. Small, consistent behaviours that communicate, you're safe here, your voice matters, we actually want your thinking here. And over time, those signals build trust. And trust is what allows our voice to flourish. There's another side to this that often goes unnoticed. As leaders become more senior, their voice can actually become more restricted. Early in your career, you're encouraged to explore ideas, to ask questions, to learn out loud. But as you step into leadership, something shifts. Your words carry more weight. You know that more people are watching. And there's often an unspoken expectation to sound certain and to get things right. So leaders begin to filter themselves. They hold back uncertainty and they stop thinking out loud. They become more careful. And over time, their voice becomes more controlled and less authentic. This is one of the hidden reasons leadership can feel lonely. You're in the room, but not always fully yourself in the room. Leadership expert Herminia Ibarra talks about the importance of experimenting with new ways of thinking and leading. But experimentation requires space, trust, and feeling safe. And many leaders feel that they've lost that space, which is why voice isn't just something leaders create for others. It's something that they need to protect for themselves. And this is actually something very close to my heart this month, because alongside this theme of voice, I've had the privilege of being part of something very special. I'm one of 18 women contributing to a collaborative book called Show Your Light, And what I love about this book is what it's about, exactly what I've been talking about today. Women choosing to use their voice. Not perfectly, not when they feel completely ready, but honestly sharing their stories, their experiences, their moments of doubt, growth, fear and courage. Because finding your voice isn't about waiting until you feel confident. It's about deciding what story matters enough to be shared anyway. The book launches on the 24th of April on Amazon, and I genuinely love your support, not just because I'm part of it, but because I know how powerful these stories can be in helping others to step forward too. So here are 3 gentle questions for you this month, things that I want you to reflect on. So number 1 is, where in my work or life do I feel able to use my voice freely? Number 2, where do I notice myself holding back or editing what I say? Number 3, whose voice around me might not yet be fully heard? And your invitation this month is to choose one small act of voice. It might be sharing an idea you've been sitting on, asking a question others may be wondering, inviting someone quieter into the conversation, or saying something honest that you've been holding back on. Voice doesn't have to be loud, but it needs to be real, because often leadership begins the moment we decide to speak. So I'd like to thank you for spending this time with me today. If this episode has resonated, please like it. Follow the podcast to make sure you don't miss future episodes, because each month we're exploring confidence, leadership and flourishing in a way that's practical, human and real. And I'd love for you to leave a review if it resonated. If you'd like to go deeper, I invite you to explore my Wheel of Self-Belief, a simple way to understand where your confidence is strong and where it might need some nurturing. And if you're ready to grow alongside other women, you can also explore my Step Up and Stand Out programme, and there's a waiting list for that on my website. And as we move through this journey together, remember this: bravery is the action, vulnerability is the openness, trust is the bridge, belonging is the outcome. Until next month, keep stepping up, keep standing out, but most importantly, keep flourishing.